In 2017, fantasy author Neil Gaiman walked into a private event filled with scientists, artists, inventors, and world-famous thinkers. And almost immediately he had one thought: I should not be here. Everyone in that room felt extraordinary, successful, brilliant, important. And compared to them, he felt like someone who accidentally slipped past security. Then something strange happened. An older man walked up beside him, friendly, quiet, humble. They started talking, and after a while, the man looked around the room and said, "What am I even doing here? These people changed the world. I don't belong in this room." Neil Gaiman froze, because the man saying this was not just some random guest. It was Neil Armstrong, the first human being to walk on the moon. Think about how insane that is. One of the greatest writers alive, and the first man to ever stand on another world. Both secretly believed that maybe they were frauds, not untalented, not lazy, frauds. People who somehow tricked everyone around them into believing they mattered. And if that sounds irrational, that's because it is. But irrational does not mean rare. In fact, this feeling is so common that psychology eventually gave it a name: imposter syndrome. Author Maya Angelou once said that every time she started a new book, she secretly believed, this is the one where people finally discover I have no idea what I'm doing. This was after writing multiple best-selling books, after global recognition, after becoming one of the most respected voices in literature. And still, she felt fake. Even Albert Einstein struggled with this. Near the end of his life, after changing physics forever, after winning the Nobel Prize, after becoming possibly the most famous scientist in human history, Einstein described himself as having an involuntary swindle, as if somehow he had fooled the entire world. That sentence becomes terrifying when you realize something. If Einstein felt intellectually fake, what chance does everyone else have? And this is where most people misunderstand imposter syndrome. It is not just insecurity. It is not, I wish I were better. It is, if people saw the real me, this entire thing would collapse. Your career, your success, your reputation, your relationships. All of it feels temporary, like you are one mistake away from being exposed. Back in the 1970s, psychologists Pauline Clance and Suzanne Imes started noticing something strange. Highly successful students, people with excellent grades, intelligent, capable, accomplished people, kept saying the same thing: I don't deserve to be here. They believed their success was luck. Their intelligence was exaggerated. Their achievements were accidents. And eventually, people would realize the truth. The psychologists named this pattern the imposter phenomenon. Later, the world renamed it imposter syndrome. And once the term appeared, people everywhere immediately recognized themselves in it. Today, research suggests around 70 to 80% of people experience imposter syndrome at some point in their lives, which means most people around you, including the confident ones, probably feel more uncertain than they look. Even CEOs. A 2024 Global Leadership Report found that most executives secretly doubt whether they deserve their positions. The people running billion-dollar companies are often terrified someone will discover they are not qualified enough. And here's the disturbing part. The smarter someone becomes, the easier it is for this feeling to grow. Because knowledge creates awareness. The more you learn, the more you realize how much you do not know. Imposter syndrome becomes a psychological loop. And once you enter it, success itself becomes dangerous. Because if you fail, your brain says, see, I knew it, I'm not actually good enough. But if you succeed, your brain says, great, now I have to do it again. Success does not calm the fear, it raises the stakes. That is why some of the most high-achieving people on earth become workaholics. Not because they feel brilliant, because they feel hunted. Their entire life becomes an attempt to stay ahead of exposure. Every project, every achievement, every late-night work session feels less like ambition and more like survival. Psychologists even found something strange. People with imposter syndrome often fear both failure and success. Failure feels dangerous because it could expose them, but success feels dangerous too, because now expectations rise, and deep down, they are terrified they will never be able to repeat it. This creates a brutal mental cycle. You succeed, you panic, you overwork, you burn out, you doubt yourself, then repeat the entire process again. So where does this feeling come from? Psychologists have debated this for decades, and one of the biggest theories goes back to childhood. Some children grow up constantly compared to siblings, the smart one, the talented one, the successful one, and eventually, no matter what they achieve, it never feels like enough. Others experience the opposite. They are constantly praised as gifted or special, and that creates another problem, because once your identity becomes the smart kid, making mistakes suddenly feels terrifying. You stop seeing failure as a normal part of growth. Instead, failure becomes evidence that your entire identity was fake. But childhood is not the only cause. Sometimes imposter syndrome appears when your life changes faster than your identity does. A promotion, a new career, a better social class, a prestigious university, suddenly entering spaces you never imagined yourself belonging to. Your external life changes, but internally, part of you still feels like the old version of yourself, like someone who grew up poor, walking into a luxury party while secretly feeling like everyone can still see the trailer park on them. The French sociologist Pierre Bourdieu described this kind of identity split. Your environment changes before your self-image does, so mentally you end up living in two worlds at once. And then psychology discovered something even stranger. The people who doubt themselves the most are often more competent than the people who never doubt themselves at all. In 1999, psychologists David Dunning and Justin Kruger published one of the most famous studies in modern psychology. They discovered that people who performed poorly on tests often dramatically overestimated their own abilities. Meanwhile, more knowledgeable people underestimated themselves, because incompetence hides itself. If you know very little about a subject, you also lack the ability to recognize how little you know. But intelligent people see complexity everywhere. They see nuance, uncertainty, limitations, missing information, and because of that, confidence becomes harder. That is why truly intelligent people often sound less certain than average people, not because they know less, because they understand how complicated reality actually is. But even if imposter syndrome has psychological benefits, it still comes with a cost, a brutal one: anxiety, burnout, insomnia, perfectionism, depression, isolation. A nervous system that never fully relaxes, because no achievement ever feels final. You never arrive. You only temporarily escape exposure. And eventually, you stop enjoying your own success, because every victory immediately transforms into pressure. Some people become addicted to productivity, not because they love working, because resting makes the voice louder, the voice that says, "You are falling behind. You are not enough. They are going to find out." But here is the part nobody tells you. Completely eliminating self-doubt would probably make you worse. A world filled with people who never question themselves would be terrifying. People absolutely convinced they are right are often the least self-aware people in the room. Doubt is painful, but doubt also creates humility, curiosity, growth, self-reflection. The goal is not to destroy doubt completely. The goal is learning how to live somewhere healthy, between insecurity and arrogance. Enough doubt to keep learning, enough confidence to keep moving, because the people who never question themselves rarely evolve, but the people who only question themselves rarely rest. Maybe imposter syndrome was never proof that you are weak. Maybe it is simply the side effect of being conscious enough to understand your own imperfections. The problem begins when self-awareness turns into self-destruction, when growth turns into punishment, when ambition turns into fear. You do not need to believe you are the smartest person in the room. You only need to stop believing you are secretly the dumbest. And maybe real confidence was never certainty. Maybe real confidence is being able to move forward while still carrying doubt with you.